Good morning, Seller Sessions. Izabela Hamilton with Ring Bell, and I have with me today one of my favorite guests who also happens to be the host of Seller Sessions, Mr. Danny McMillan. Tududunum.
How are we doing? How are we feeling?
Amazing.
Good. I'm
That
glad
was
someone
that was
feels
my
amazing.
intro for you. It was kind of weak, tududum, but that's all I
No,
got.
that's right. It reminds me of what was it? The IDM. What was it? The computer company with the free tones. What is it? IBM. Do you know the free
Oh
strikes? Where
yes.
they used to
Oh
have
my God.
like a dun dun dun. Yeah,
That's old school, Danny. We're not that
I
old,
know.
are we?
No, well, I am. You're a lot younger than me, but yeah, I'm showing my age. So today's going to be an interesting one.
And we're matching today. See, we didn't even talk about it, and boom, we're all in black.
Do you know what I'm missing? I'm
What? The
missing.
red lipstick?
I'm not rocking the red lipstick. Yeah,
We need to talk about that, Danny, because
yeah,
I meant to bring this to your attention. When you come on my show, you
yeah.
must have red lipstick on and possibly red earrings.
Okay, so this is the last time I'll be on your show if the requirements is for me to wear red lipstick. I will not ever live it down. So cool. So Monday, mindset day, your day, lots to chat about. I've been making some notes actually for the show, and we can talk about your experiences with this as well.
Uh-oh. We need to
But
come out to the world. Here we go.
No, right. So we're going to talk DMT, which you've got experience with anyway. I've done it through breathing work, and then dopamine, poor
Mhm.
sleep, excessive screen time, using light, optimizing light for sleep and your circadian rhythm. There's a lot of stuff to cover. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about a load of shit that I should do and fail to do on a daily basis. So this is more like an accountability show. In some areas of my life, I'm quite disciplined. But when it comes to picking up that fucking mobile phone and putting it down, I'm murder. I'm terrible with it. Like I've got an addiction to cell phones, and it's got to stop because I know it's part of the issues with sleep and stuff. So for me, this is like an accountability show. I mean, I know people that have got like them time set boxes. I know
Yes.
some people have been through 2 or 3 of those boxes because they put their phone in the box and like a crackhead, about 4 hours later, they're so bored, they end up taking a hammer to the box. And so
Oh
they have
my
to keep
God.
replacing them. So it's
So
not
that's a
gone.
good Amazon sellers. If you are listening to this, this is your new product that you could be launching because we're
Exactly.
all addicted.
Yeah. You know what? There'll be a lot of reviews complaining that your brakes easy. What do you mean? Well, when I put a hammer to it, because it took me I had to break into it. This is the thing. We'll go into the details of the show, but it's something that's really bugged me for a while, and I know I need to deal with it. And I want to go over some of the data and stuff and reference points for this because it's something I've constantly struggled through with. And I don't know about you, but it sounds really sad. But I'm like, you put the phone away, you can watch TV. I don't really watch TV and stuff. And there's only so many hours you can spend in the gym and have a magnesium bath and relax and meditate. And you're like, well, what the fuck am I going to do with the rest of the evening? I'm bored. So I've now got to find new shit to do to stop this addiction to the mobile phone.
It's definitely an addiction, and it's like it's so easy for us. Everything is at
Yeah,
our fingertips. And I was having a discussion with somebody the other day because that's what we do. We just mindset all day.
yeah,
But we were talking about how we are so involved into this, like not only social media, but everything is at our fingertips. We don't really have to think about anything anymore. You're like, wait, what was the name of that movie? And you quickly gonna go on your phone and look it up. And we don't give our brains enough time to process this information and pull the information out from our storage. And the more we do that, the more we tell our brain that we don't have to use it. So that muscle gets weakened and weakened over time. And yet at the same time, we do have the world at our fingertips, but we're not utilizing it in the ways that we should, that would be beneficial for our businesses, for our really anything in our life. And it's like now we have it, we don't have discipline enough to be able to use it. And for those that can, more kudos to them. I hope we can find somebody, then bring them on the show and ask them how they break this addiction. But it's definitely something that I don't think you're the only one going through. I think it's all of us. And even with sleep, like I wake up sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, what have I missed? Like first thing I
yeah.
do is like I look at the phone, and it's such a It's terrible.
This is the thing, and we're all doing it. I mean, there's different levels. Like I don't really care. I'll just say how it is, and I'm saying it for accountability for me. And then I'll start off well. You know, the vape goes away, the phone goes away about 7 o'clock, and then next day it's 7:30. Then it's 8 o'clock. Then it's 8:30, and then I'm back to it's just before sleep. I'm vaping, looking at my screen. I'm looking at the screen now while we're talking because I'm just sharing to the groups. But it's finding those adjustments. Because the impact of what it has. Let me just quickly share to the last group, and then I want to go through some of this stuff with you. I want to talk about the impact it has on dopamine and raising above baseline and stuff. So effectively, a series of things that we do. If we look at dopamine, with dopamine, like we had these receptors that these are our reward, and it helps with motivation, etc., etc. And there's a number of different things that trigger your dopamine, and whether you notice it or not, again, like scrolling on a mobile phone, etc. So one of the things that, whilst it doesn't have the same impact of going above baseline, but coffee, like I drink lots of coffee as well, and what it does, it's a small increase with coffee, but it modulates the receptors from the research I understand. So if you're tying in coffee with vaping, nicotine will take you double above baseline. Yeah, so that doubles above baseline. But then things like music will, I'm not sure, I didn't get the calculation on that, but for instance, exercise is 1.5 above baselines as long as you enjoy the activity. So if you are doing exercises you don't like to do, right, then you will not get the same increase in dopamine that you would with stuff that you really enjoy to do. So that's why it's really important as well. And if you notice when you're in the gym and you have you may have a pre-workout to get that energy going, or you have a coffee before you go in. Some people do it fasted, right? So they get that, they're trying to get the effects of the compound effects of where they rest on top of each other. And then in other areas like this Andrew Huberman, I think he's pronounced. He's a professor and resident at Stanford, and he does a lot of stuff in and around this. I'll share the links to the videos and stuff. Like these are like 2 hour long, almost like lectures, but they're broken into sections. So exercise is 1.5. Yeah. Nicotine doubles above baselines. And with the overuse of mobile phones, whilst this gives you a dopamine rush and it floods the system in the brain, it also, because of the light factor from screens, not just blue light, because everyone thinks that blue light is terrible and some people leave these blue light glasses on all day, but you need the full spectrum of light, and the best light is obviously comes from outside. So sex doubles above baseline as well. But the so I'm reading off the screen, so I'm not looking at your face when I said sex doubles above baseline there. Going back to the caffeine thing, there's another thing that we wake up in the morning, we instantly reach to go and have a coffee. Now, apparently, if you delay that onset of the rise in caffeine in your blood and in your body, if you can delay that by like an hour, you'll get better therapeutic effects from the caffeine itself. And especially if you combine this by drinking plenty of water. So when you wake up in the morning, quite often you're effectively getting up in the morning to rehydrate overnight. You've seen it where when you get up in the morning, you might have flat stomach, etc., and your body would look slightly different from when it's had food and it's got plenty of fluids, right? So there's a part there with the dehydration process, and depending on when you last had water or some level of fluids before. Now, part of this dopamine thing as well, which comes to, is the overload. Now, women are phenomenal at multitasking, and it's but with that in mind, when you are multitasking and you're not focused on one thing, even if it's in the entertainment side, meaning let's just say you've got Netflix on, you're in the evening, you're chilling, you're watching Netflix, but you're on your phone. That's still a form of multitasking. So when you're whizzing through Facebook, and that's why the endless scroll works. Mm-hmm. That's why these tools are developed that way. Because if you have to paginate every time you go down and paginate, you're not going to get that same kind of crack book experience or the Instagram thing. Another thing related to that, I tried the other day. If you switch your phone to grayscale, right? It's less exciting, right? So you're looking at the screen, it's not as interested in that. And so the idea behind that is that you would end up using your phone like less. I just got used to watching everything in grayscale and flicking through the screen. And then what happened the other day, I just had enough. I'm like, well, I've got to post a couple of bits on social for the party, like the events. But I don't know what the pictures look like because everything's in grayscale because the whole phone's in grayscale. When I turned it back to color, it was like a psychedelic effect. It's like the richness in colors, like you don't realize the strength and the depth of those colors. And that all plays into the part of the dopamine system as well. Now
that's amazing that you were able to see that difference like so immediate, like going from the grayscale to like, oh my God, this is in color.
But bearing in mind, I didn't do it switch from grayscale from like only in one day. I was on grayscale for about a week because it lasted about 20 minutes. I went, yeah, that looks shit. I don't need to look at my phone. And I thought, I'm a champion. That's good. I've nailed my addiction to the phone. And then I just got used to it.
I wonder how this works for people who are colorblind that may also only see in grayscale. I wonder like what the data would show on those people if they would have a less tendency of actually being on their phone. I don't know anybody. I know people that are colorblind but like to different colors, but I haven't met anybody that all they see is like gray. I wonder like how would that affect, or will that still be an addiction made around that color? You know, we don't know. I don't know. I never thought of it.
Yeah. So the other parts of this, we've gone from the overload effect. So multitasking. So when we're sitting here, we're hitting our list. We've got Facebook open and links going, the doors going, the Amazon drivers here, or whatever. All of those things is that where these level of disruptions leave things very much scattered. It's the same with alcohol. Now, dopamine, your system gets flooded once you drink alcohol. Then first 2 or 3 alcoholic drinks, they're normally the best part of the alcohol experience, right? That relaxed, and it's an impact on your serotonin levels and stuff. And you feel like chilled and you feel like relaxed and stuff. But that floods the dopamine system. So what we end up doing is that we keep having this compounding effect where we're not at baseline. We're constantly above baseline all the time. And it may be like that as part of our entrepreneurial personalities. We're always looking for that next fix, if you like. It's getting the next deal done, putting the next event on, getting the next product ready for launch, the excitement of the launch. Will this go right? Will it go wrong? Dealing with all of those kind of things, running around, putting out fires. These are all things that kick in the adrenaline system and your endocrine system. There's so many facets to it. The other part of it as well, and I've just thrown this one in here, but just to give you an example, amphetamines, not that we take them, but there are amphetamine-based drugs that people use for ADHD and stuff like that. Now, with that in mind, that's not 1 or 2 above baseline, that's like 10. So when we've got pharmaceutical companies providing these on prescription to people, and they're 10 above baseline, 10x above baseline, where do you regulate for normality? So this is why people will struggle when they're dealing with things like that, because it's amphetamine based, and the prolonged effects of that. So some of the effects that goes into when you have really obliterated your dopamine system, you're going to struggle with motivation. You're going to struggle with sleep. You're going to have really, really poor concentration. And you're going to constantly be in a tired state, because in order to be excited about stuff, like we only want to work on the exciting stuff in our business, and we leave the boring stuff to the end, or we don't get around to doing it because there's always something more exciting to do than the boring shit. And it goes back to the shiny object syndrome. And so if you're in a place where you've obliterated your dopamine system year after year, continuously, then that's going to lead to a place where anything that you really need to get done that has no excitement around it, you're not going to want to be able to do these tasks. And you reduce your levels of concentration. And when you reduce your levels of concentration, you can't do that focus work. And if you don't do the focus work, you're going to lose focus on other areas of your life. And especially if it has impact on sleep, and then we move into sleep deprivation, we're on a new realm now. Because that not only affects the dopamine system, the recovery of your body, the regulation of your body for general good health. It's one of the most important factors. but most of us as entrepreneurs barely get the regulated amount of sleep that our body really needs, right?
Right. And it's also something that, a lot of people brag about, like, oh, I only sleep 4 hours a night, like I'm such a machine, all I do is work. And it worries me when I hear this. I mean, yes, there's some of us who handle better shorter amounts of sleep. That's not me. I need to have at least 8 hours. And I've tried. And, for the longest time, like I made myself feel so guilty that I'm not the kind of person that wakes up at 4 or at 5. Like we both know Mina. Like Mina's a machine. He wakes up at 4:30 or 4:45. And, he's able to be concentrated and be fully focused, and I cannot. Like if I do that, it will ruin my whole day. And I tried to change that so much, and it's just not part of, like, I cannot. I mean, if I tried for maybe a few months, maybe eventually I will get the hang of it, but I don't want to go through that pain. So some of us need more hours of sleep than some. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's that people depend on, is it the chromatodes? I can't remember exactly the breakdown, but there's something that can be measured within the body, will give you a general idea of where your suitability for your DNA and the best way for you to sleep. Because some people get chastised for working late at night and laying in the morning, but they're most like artists, right? People working, musicians in studios, programmers are a great example. They want to get into flow state, and they find that their best times is to work from, say, 10 p.m. till 6 in the morning to get their best work done. But in the traditional world, we see that as laziness, or they're not normal. But sometimes you have to work to what your body says, because your circadian rhythm plays a massive part in the regulation of your life. And if you work against it, it's not going to benefit you, because them same people that try and regulate on the time clock that everyone else does, and us as humans, we're different to each other in many ways, right? And that comes down to our biology as well. And if someone's suitable to that time, try and get them to feel guilty about going to bed at 9 and getting up at 4 when their best hours are done on the opposite end of the spectrum. Right. But just going back to Mina, we all know Mina, he's a machine, like you said, but he's never off, is he? It's like he has this on button, and I'm like, but where's the off switch? I've never seen him chill. But that's good. That works for his characteristics, A-type personality. Do you know what I mean? But he gets the job done. And if he's happy and he's exercising, and he eats health, and he's happy, then it's going to work for him, you know? Just some of the things from this Andrew Huberman, that I'll post a link to the video as well. It's quite long. So effectively, he was on with another professor who works at an adjoining college. So he starts to talk about the point of the cycles that we live in as human beings. Like, we sit inside under these lights all day, and with technology, we're staring at our screens all the time. And on a biological level, and we've gone back to hundreds of years, they've even done a test where they took students camping, because they had issues with their circadian rhythm. These guys have got into a situation where they were going to bed very late and starting getting up very late in the day, and they couldn't find any way to fix this, try and get their sleep patterns back to normal. So what they did is they took them all on a camping trip, and because they're using the regulation of traditional night and wakefulness from the day, and no technology, so no screens, and within 7 days they'd all recovered their sleep patterns, and they'd all been asleep for longer hours while they're out in camping, because their light become candles or by fireside light. Yeah. And so they'll wake up naturally, and they're earthed because they're sleeping out on the ground. They're getting air, they're getting the light into their eyes. And when the sun comes down, their melatonin then rises, because everyone talks about having melatonin as supplementation. So when we're traveling in the jet lag, because what plays a massive part in that is you come to the UK, right? You get on an 8.5 to 9.5 hour flight. No matter what time of the day it is, you're going into a metal capsule with this set of lights, and them lights are on all the time. Although they dim the lights are on all the time. So it don't matter what time of day. And then you could come out the other end. You could go in and it's dark, and you could come out, it's light, or you can go in, it's dark, and you come out and it's dark, but you've had all this light in between. And so that all plays a part, because effectively what we have is that you've got neurons in the eyes that set our circadian rhythm from light. And even now, and I even tried to do it this morning, but it's too cold in the village. I went out there for about 5 minutes. But if you get up in the morning, as sunlight comes up, just go outside for 15 minutes, maybe take your coffee. Some people like to do a bit of running or jogging or whatever. But if you go out and get that light on your face and on your eyes, it doesn't matter if it's cloudy, because the light outside is still going to be a better spectrum of light than you would in your office, supplementing with standard lights or these kind of lamps. Some of these lamps kind of work to a certain degree, but there's nothing better than getting them lights. And what you end up doing is you taper your light exposure throughout the day. So as you get towards the end of the day, I mean, what would be optimal, but no one's going to do it and think I'm a lunatic. But even when you get to the evening, it is like candlelight. If you can set a load of candles and work from that, which most people won't do, it sounds excessive. But what happens is, even if you don't do that, even if you took your phone and put it in the drawer at 5 o'clock, because that light at night is messing with the melatonin, and what it does, it blunts the melatonin. And so what should happen over the course of the day, as the daylight changes, the melatonin secreting should increase in your body, right? So it's getting ready for preparation as it goes to dark and you sleep, and then you get some proper sleep. But we disrupt that with our mobile phones, because we're truncating that. And what we're doing is we can either go to sleep and have a shorter duration of sleep, which is typical for me, is that I can sleep 5 to 5.5 hours and I'll wake up and I'm wide awake. Don't matter what time I go to bed. I mean, even like last week, both of the events at the weekend, in bed at 3 after being up for 23 hours, I'm awake 4 hours later. The next night, same thing again, awake 5 hours later. I don't get them 8 hours in still. And again, what was I doing before I'm going to bed? Checking all your last messages, because obviously putting on vents and stuff. And you're looking at screens, yeah? And then what happens, we disrupt our circadian rhythm if we're sleeping in during the day to supplement from the nighttime. And it's almost like if you sleep that short duration, you're effectively having an extended nap. So that becomes more confusing for people. And even like things like turning lights on when you get up in the night to go to the bathroom. So some of the things that you can do is optimize your food and your fluid intake. So maybe 3 hours before bed is your last meal, and then you're tapering off on the fluids that you're taking as well. So if anyone took any notice of anything I just said, or it was just gone over her head, I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is, put the phone in the fucking drawer, 5 o'clock. Start there. If you don't do any of this other shit, put the phone in the drawer. And even and you go, well, I'm bored. TV screens at a distance is far better than looking at a mobile phone, which is a few inches from your face. Far, far better. So it's hard to just cut away from this. And it's finding out what can you do. As I said, like, you can exercise, you can meditate, you can have a bath. But if it's 5 o'clock and you go to bed at 10, you've got 5 hours to do, right? And you've already been working on your business all day if you've been up at 4 or 5 in the morning. Right. Yeah. So what do you do? More work? But then what do? Do you do it in front of a screen again? So you're back to, do you see what I mean? It's like, exactly. Where do you do? And I mean, it's old fashioned, but we could sit there and talk to our family.
Exactly. And we like to, give ourselves excuses like, oh, I'm using this because I need to check on something for work. And I think, putting the phone away at 5 o'clock, it sounds magical right now because most won't do it. But I think, even starting with maybe 1 hour before bed, that would still be better, because it's hard for people to make that big jump. It's hard for me to put it down. Like I can't even preach about it because it's something I've been wanting to do, but it's very, very hard. And like you say, like, okay, I have my time where I read my books, but I know I could have even more time. And I actually love it. Once I start getting into it, I'm like, oh my God, why haven't I not been doing this for like hours and hours? And then next thing you know, you're checking your phone. You're like, oh my God, what have I missed for the past half an hour? Is the world on fire? It's like this triggers in your brain that's always like, oh my God, what have I missed out? What did I miss out? Like what is happening in the world that I'm not aware of? And, if you're home and your family is good and everything is good, there's really no no need to have that sense of urgency to pick up your phone. I mean, before we had a landline phone where, maybe somebody would call us once, twice a week, and we would be so excited. Oh my God, the phone is ringing. But now it's like everything is right here, and it's so easy to have access to all of this and so hard to pull away. It's unfortunate.
It's funny about the landline. Do you remember years ago, the phone would ring and it'd be, I'll get it. No, I'll get it. I'll get it. And now all it's going to be is cold calling, right? Because the phone providers force you to have it as part of your internet. It's the scam, right? So nowadays it's like, you get it. No, you get it, because no one's interested in picking up the landline. Who calls on the landline? Your nan or your mum. Do you know what I mean? Not that you should be, I'll take that back because my mum might see this, but my point is that normally someone is trying to sell you shit, even if you're on a private number, Even
if you see people calling, you're like, wait a second, why are you calling me? Why are you not texting me?
Yes. So last part I want to move into, which kind of all feeds back into this stuff, is to talk about chakras, opening the third eye, and then releasing of DMT. Because these are some of the things that to make some adjustment in your body. Now, some people are going to talk about chakras as more as a pseudoscience, nonsense, or whatever. But let me just bear with me, because you've worked with Stephen, haven't you? My guy, I introduced you. And I always say there's no such thing as a biological free lunch. And if you've got stuff trapped within the chakras, within your body, etc., you get that released. That helps with regulation on all different levels. So just to go through that, I'm going to let me see if I can bring this chart up, and then we can just do it on the screen.
And for this, Danny, this may be a very new concept. I mean, for us, because we talk about it all the time, we know what the chakras are. But we have to understand that there's a lot of people who maybe this is their first time ever even hearing about this concept. So maybe you can explain to us what the chakras are.
Yeah, so I'll go through. I'm just going to pull up a chakra chart for.
Let's do that.
Let me put it up on the screen. That might be a bit easier. Share slides, video, share screen. Let's do that. Chrome tab. There we go. Okay, can you see that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there are more than 7, but these are the key 7 chakras. I'll start at the bottom, which is the root chakra. Then you've got the sacral chakra, solar plexus, then the heart, throat, third eye, and then the crown. So the root chakra is functions effectively for grounding, survival, stability, comfort, and safety. And then the sacral is sensuality, sexuality, pleasure, creativity. You can imagine where that one's placed on men and women. Then we've got the solar plexus, which is functionings for strength, ego, power, self-esteem, and digestion as well. Then you've got the heart chakra, which is love, acceptance, compassion, kindness, peace. And throat is back of the neck and throat, communication, expression, honesty, purification. And then the third eye is between the eyebrows, which is intuition, visualization, imagination, clairvoyancy, if you buy into that end of the spectrum. And then the crown chakra is knowledge, fulfillment, spiritual, and self-realization. Now, the thing is with these, there's more stuff to read about this on YouTube and various different places. It's down to the individual to do the work. But the idea is to have everything in balance. Everything about yourself is in balance. And if your chakras are out, this is kind of like if someone, for people processing trauma, they may be processing trauma and they're doing it through the body. And so maybe there's something where it's trapped, or they feel off kilter, they feel out of balance. So then you want to be more centralized and grounded and stuff. So the impact of it is, imagine doing a healing session whereby you work with a professional in that field, or if you would like to call them professionals. Obviously these are not normally regulated in the same way as, I don't know, I haven't got an example, but they're effectively, because it's more on the spiritual side, people either laugh at it or they're indifferent about it, or some people see it for what it is because there's not necessarily the same level of science behind it that other stuff has. But it's really important to get that into balance. And one of the key things that as part of that, I had a really interesting experience when I was meditating on the chakras, because you go through the body, you focus, third eye, the throat, the solar plexus and stuff. And so when you're doing your meditation, you'll think of those areas. And one of the experiences I had, which absolutely blew my mind, and I actually checked with someone there, I was skeptical at first about it, but I was focusing on, and it was the second time that I'd done this on the third eye. And effectively, I see a third eye, and I see blood, then water, then light come out the eye. And that just kind of freaks me out. And what he said to me, that's processing. So you're opening the third eye, you're taking 46 years going back, and everything kind of come out of that moment in that experience. Some, like when you see like the blood, it starts to freak you out. And then you see the water washing away the blood, and then you see a light come out. I've never shared that before, because everyone will probably want to take me off to the nearest lunatic assignment. But it was a very, very interesting experience. And I'll go into some of the information behind it, where it talks about opening the third eye. So the third eye gives us the ability to see beyond what is physically present in the moment, effectively. I'm just going through I'm using someone else's content. This is wellandgood.com, opening the third eye. Yeah. Any blockages can result in regular brain fog, where we struggle with concentration, have difficulty processing information, or perhaps indecisive. Also talks about paying attention to your dreams. Focus on meditation on the third eye. Whether you use an app, practice mindfulness meditation, or transcendental, is that? No, transcendental meditation. I should have gone to school. If you're looking to open the third eye, meditation help with that quite a bit. Focus your attention on the point between browse and meditation, and simply observe what images and thoughts arrive. Go down a bit. There's some other stuff. Practice breathing work. Breathing work is an excellent tool in everyday life, but especially beneficial for opening the third eye. There are many kinds of breathing work, in particular well suited to opening the sixth chakra. Different types of yoga and tying in with the breathing work and meditation works. What else? That's more about diet, trying essential oils, meditate with crystals. Now we're starting to move right over into that. Reiki masters and other healers do this kind of work as well. It's stuff that I would suggest people to look into, because I think the more and more I talk about it, the more crazy I will sound. But I just found I'm always open to different types of experience. And I always say to people, like you get the gym bro goes to the gym, right? Let's say he got bullied at school. So he goes to the gym to put muscle on, but he hasn't done any psychological work whatsoever. And then he decides, I'm going to jump on steroids now. And his TRT is or testosterone level is like 3,000, and he runs around runs around and wonders why he's angry. Do you know what I mean? And I think what you've got to have is a trifecta effect: mentally, spiritually, and physically. You need to balance all three of those. So a lot of people will go, I'm just going to go on a keto diet, lose some weight, but they're not focused on any other areas of their life to balance that. And I think in order to try and help you become the best person you possibly can, and you put the work in, tying in all three of those aspects: mental, physical, and spiritual. But a lot of people see the spiritual side as more woo-woo, especially from a guy from East London who talks like me, probably doesn't seem to be the most spiritual people, right? But I'm full of surprises. But I find that kind of work will really balance. And stuff with the healing work as well is that if you're training a lot, your body's got to recover. And so part of that healing work works really well when you're trying to do that, because it is a compounding effect. I mean, we all get stressed. We all process stress in different ways. I mean, I speak to people all the time, even through COVID. I'm not myself especially, but a lot of people I knew struggled with COVID, but they got into that situation where they were sitting at home. They wasn't necessarily working on other things. They're working on their business. But that aspect of being at home for months on end that really starts to grind down on people. And then what they end up doing is they slip into bad habits, and they're not exercising. Their sleep is dysregulated. And so, yeah, that's where I want to get to on that point. But the releasing DMT as well. Before I talk about it, let's talk about your experience, because you've done it, external DMT, haven't you? Do you want to go through that experience?
I can, for sure. So, but I just want to touch one little thing before we move on to DMT about meditation, because it's so underrated and undervalued. And, most people, like you said, they're just running around and they're thinking, they're being productive. And even considering taking 5 minutes to sit down and recalibrate yourself and bring awareness back into your body, like, this is who I am. I'm Izabela. I'm this. I'm sitting down here. I'm breathing. You just bring back focus onto your being, because our mind tends to run away from us all the time. And it's for all of us. We're thinking of the business. We're thinking of family. We're thinking of this. And it's almost like, even taking that 5 minutes to sit down with ourselves seems like a stretch. Like, oh my God, I could be doing so many other things right now. But what happens is, this is actually what will make us even more creative and will bring more productivity. The fact that you took those few minutes to sit down, and even maybe a problem that you've been working on for so long in your business that you can't seem to find that answer may come to you when you sit down and you're actually able to process everything you've been going through that day. Because sometimes we ask ourselves, how do I fix this? How do I solve this? And the answer never comes. And the reason for some people it never comes because we never give it that time. We never allow it for that time to sit down and actually wait for that answer to come back, because our brain is always working. If you pose questions to your brain, how do I fix this? How do I increase profit into my business? How do I make my product better? Whatever the question may be, if we keep asking these questions, but we never allow time for the answer to come through, then it's like you keep running around. So even taking 2-3 minutes a day where you just sit down and you close your eyes and you center. And I think most people don't want to do it because they say, I'm not good at meditating. This is one thing I hear all the time. I'm not good. Nobody is good at meditating. It's not about being good. It's not about labeling what you're doing good or bad. It's about you actually taking that time to just sit there, and whatever comes to you, just let it come. And the more you sit down, the more you'll be able to sift through these thoughts, because the purpose of meditation is not to block your thoughts. This is a big misconception that people encounter, and they're like, well, obviously I'm not good at it because I sit down and a million other thoughts come to my mind. Well, yeah, that's what happens because you haven't allowed your mind to have any of these thoughts, because you keep pushing everything away. Once you have a thought, whether it's, you get upset about something sad is happening in your life. Next, you pick up your phone to make you forget about that. Everything we think about, we push away by means of like social media or YouTube or whatever entertainment we give ourselves, where that dopamine drop comes in, because we're pushing away everything that we should be actually working on. So if you're depressed about something or sad about something, like sit with that. If you want to cry, just sit with that and cry and let it out. Because every time we repress that and we sweep it under the rug keeps getting bigger, because now you have so much shit that you're not facing. And then of course nobody wants to deal with that. So even if you're never meditated, just sit down once a day for a minute. Start there, and then you're going to start getting that good feeling about it. And next thing you know, you're going to be maybe a little less on social media, and you look forward to that meditative time where you're just you alone with your thoughts. And I promise you, it's going to start feeling so juicy and so good. You're just sitting in meditation and you start feeling yourself. So that was just a little point before moving to DMT. So DMT, I forgot exactly what it's.
Sorry, can I just make a quick point? Going back to the meditation, there's a couple of things that that people, and I'm going to say this, and that's not to offend people. There's going to be two types. There's people that have self-loathing and they don't want to look at themselves. They don't want to do that work because they're scared of doing that work. And that's what, like when some people say, oh, I can't meditate, like maybe they've had maybe they just don't want to look at themselves, and people on the cluster B spectrum, by looking at themselves, and they've already created a false self to protect themselves from trauma and childhood, that opens way too many doors. And we've discussed this on the show about decompensation and the collapse and stuff. So I mean, there are people that one say scared, self-loathing. Some, like you said, naturally they're worried about their thoughts, and they don't self-loathe. So that's why, like, I've always been careful of when I speak to people about meditation. Like, I'm always saying, like, it's got to be your thing, because not putting them on that spot. It's like, did you meditate yesterday? Do you know, like playing the accountability role as you do with each other, right? Because you have to be careful. Is that some people don't want to look at themselves, and I'm not. That's not to be disrespectful to people. There's some people that don't want to face their fears and some of the stuff that went on in their childhood. But there are, on that flip side, if people do look at themselves, if they do the work and they ride the pain, when they get to the other side, their life becomes a lot better as well. So it's very interesting about that self-reflection, kind of self-awareness. And then we
know, even with exercise, we know exercising is going to make us feel better, look better. And it's the same thing with meditation. Like, we know we're just putting it off. We're going to do it one day.
Yeah.
We push it away.
Cool. DMT. Let's do it.
Okay.
Well,
so
not
DMT,
let's do it, DMT, but we'll talk about it. Yeah.
I mean,
not live on the show.
Is this an invite? No, because you're gone. So I just pulled it out. DMT. I may be butchering this. Dimethyltryptamine. It's a substitute tryptamine that occurs in many plants and animals, and which is both a derivative and a structure analog of tryptamine. I guess you would have to look that up. It is used as a recreational psychedelic drug and prepared by various cultures for ritual purposes. So DMT, I've had an experience with this myself. And before I had this experience with DMT, I thought it was going to be more like what people talk about when they're talking about mushrooms, which I've never done. I don't know what that experience is like, but the way people explain it to me was like, you see different colors, everything is a little bit more vibrant. You get to see things that maybe you haven't paid attention to before. So before doing DMT, this is what I went in with, this idea. I thought I was just going to maybe see something a little bit more different than I have. I was not prepared for for where DMT took me. So I think there's like multiple ways you can do it, but the most common way people do it is you smoke it out of a pipe or some type of makeshift tool that you can smoke this. So when you do it, okay, I'll just tell you what happened to me, because I know people have different experiences with this. But the shaman, the person that introduced me to this, he put it into like a little pipe and he had me smoke it. So it's a spiritual thing. I want people to understand that it's not something that you just get high to go to a party and like party all night. This is used for spiritual, for cleansing, for having a transformational experience, to put it this way. So I I smoked this substance and I closed my eyes. I mean, I don't even know if I closed my eyes or my eyes closed by themselves, but in second one, I was transported to what I can only call a completely different universe, Danny, that I've ever seen. So for me, going through my whole life and never experiencing any drugs up to that point, zero, as in like zero. I've never tried weed. I've never tried any of this to at least have something to compare it to. So for me, it was like going your whole life without touching alcohol, and then one day you have a drink and you're like, oh my God, what is this feeling? That's the closest I can put it. So my eyes immediately closed. I was transported to a whole nother universe, and what I saw, it's very hard to explain because it's something I have never seen before on Earth. So I experienced colors in day-to-day life. You see different colors in your life, but the place that I was transported to, it had colors that I've never seen before in my life. It was like different shades of different colors, and maybe even colors that I haven't experienced in this realm, sort of way. And it had like geometrical patterns, and I had no body. I was maybe just the soul or the mind, but even that, there was no way for me to see it. It was as if I was seeing everything. The best way I can explain it is, picture this: you're camping and you're laying down on the ground, so you don't see your body, you don't feel your body, because you're just so relaxed, and you're looking up at a sky full of stars. So there's no way for you to see your body. All you see is this vast, empty space with like stars. So I think it's the same, like the experience that I had, only instead of stars, they were just geometrical patterns and colors. And this is going to be a little freaky and weird what I'm about to say next, but all I heard was this voice. And again, I don't know if it was voice or my mind or an outside voice that said, now she knows. And that experience, me being in that realm, whatever that is, it felt more real than anything I've experienced being alive on earth. So, me holding this phone in my hand, yes, it feels real. It's something I'm touching, but being in that other world felt more real than me holding this phone, if that makes any sense at all. And I don't know if you ever experienced with that. So I was in that zone for, when I came out of it, I asked my friends, and they said I was gone maybe for a minute, maybe even less than a minute. But for me, in that space, it felt like a very long time. The time wasn't really the
Stop
time
still.
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And
so it's like an out of body experience, because you can't see yourself, but you can see
right.
the activity from the sky, what's going on.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's almost like more like an out of body experience, because you can't feel who you are. Like you said, it seems very real. You move to effectively, you transform into some sort of different dimension, right?
Yes.
And these things kind of come to you where it's almost like you can resolve some problems or get answers, but it's coming from a different angle to the normal traditional way we receive information and process it. So there's a different way of processing something, and it sometimes can give you answers, or it gives you more questions.
Right. And for me, I wasn't prepared to have this like spiritual awakening, sort of say, it's like, whatever religion you're part of, most people believe there's like a heaven, after we die. And I think this is the closest I could say that it's another place that, maybe it's real, but until you experience, you can never really grasp. Like, we think there's maybe some place that exists after we die, but it's one thing to think about it and say, okay, I believe it exists, and one thing to experience it while you're alive on earth at this stage. So for me, it was extremely shocking, and it was a little scary, and not to the point that it was scary of anything that I saw there. There's no monsters or anything that trying to attack me or anything like that. It was just the fact that I was transported from where I was grounded on earth to a completely new dimension, and I was just there. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, can I even come back? But it's even hard to process thoughts at that point, because the thoughts, kept getting smaller, and they were shrinking to the point where in 1 second I had no more thoughts. So not only did I not have a body anymore, but I didn't have a mind. So that can be shocking for somebody that, again, is just, you're just alive for all these years on earth, and it's like you just died right now and you're in a completely different space. You're like, oh my God, how do I even come back? But by the time I even started like thinking about that, like by the time my thoughts returned, I was already coming out of it. And all I could do was like, I kept rubbing my arms on my legs. I was like trying to wake myself up. And all I could say was like, thank you for the experience. Thank you for the experience. Thank you for the experience. Like whatever happened, it was like, thank you, but I need to get out of here now. Like it was such a shock. Imagine like if your whole life, you only see like black and white, or like the grayscale you were talking about. And then next thing you know, you're filled with color. It was almost the same experience. You're like, oh my God, what am I even seeing? Like, how is this even real? If you've only been experiencing grayscale your whole life, and now you have an outburst of gorgeous colors
Multicolored.
and reds
Yeah.
and pinks and greens, and it's shocking to the body. And I think the meditation is that road of getting you from that place where you are now to becoming more enlightened and realizing that, you know, we do have control over our life and over our outcomes and whatever we decide to do. You know, and going back a little bit to my story, coming from Romania and, you know, being so poor there and getting to the point where I'm at now. And I tell people, this is not because I'm smarter than you. I'm not because I had more advantages than you. No, it's the fact that I was able to visualize a different life for myself. And when you focus your attention on living a certain way of life, your whole life will start to change only based on what you're focusing on. Just like if you're focusing from now on only on like a Tesla car that you've been wanting to buy, all of a sudden you're going to start seeing it on the road more, because our brain focuses on what we decide on. So if you want to have a better life and a better outcome, more abundance into your life, just focus your attention on that, and then the world will kind of shift around to bring you more of those experiences. And those experiences maybe are happening to you right now, but because you haven't focused on any particular one of them, they're escaping your route. So just to tie in this whole DMT experience, is like you can bring into your life any type of experience that you want, and I believe we have control over that. That was a little bit intense, but that was my DMT experience.
Cool. I've not experimented with DMT in that way, but I'll go through, like I did mine through breathing work.
And that's one way to access that. You don't have to do a substance or anything if you've never tried psychedelics. Like it's not, you don't have to do that. You can do it through breath work and meditation sometimes.
And by the way, none of this is medical advice. We're not saying this is something that you should do. We're just explaining an experience, and if it's something you want to heavily research and it interests you in any way and you want to try stuff for experience, that's obviously, you can sue Izabela, because I'm
that's right.
No, honestly, it's not medical advice, but we're just talking about different experiences. And people do ayahuasca, and I think that's how you pronounce it, and have different experiences for that. But safe, controlled environment with good people around you, that's where you would pretty much be if you are going to experiment with that. But again, it's not for everyone. So you took it externally. This is where we generate it internally. So I'll read out some stuff here. The pineal gland, a tiny pine cone shaped organ in the center of the brain, has been a mystery for years. Some call it the seat of the soul or the third eye, believing it holds mystical powers. Others believe it produces or secretes DMT, a psychedelic so powerful that it was dubbed the spirit molecule, and it's for spiritual awakening type trips. It turns out the pineal gland has several more practical functions, like releasing melatonin, which we got into earlier on, and regulating your circadian rhythm. So it's going back to this point here, we're talking about sleep and everything else. There's so many different facets that you can optimize for to improve on your sleep. Let me just pull this back up. The idea is pineal gland produces enough DMT to produce psychoactive effects came from the popular book DMT, The Spirit Molecule, written by clinical psychiatrist Rick Strassman in 2000. Strassman proposed that DMT excretes in the pineal gland enables the life force into life and into the next life. So it goes back to some of your experience. What if I activate the pineal gland? That's unlikely to happen. There are people who believe they can activate the pineal gland to produce enough DMT to experience an altered state of consciousness or open the third eye to heighten it. How does one achieve this activation? It depends on who you are. So people, yoga, meditation, detox cleansing, but the what I did and what a lot of people do is they do through a pace set of fast breathing. So bringing in air and doing it really fast. Some people do it laying down. Some people do it on an empty stomach and sitting cross-legged. But like for 15 minutes, if you're breathing really heavy, like you're bringing in a huge amount of oxygen and pushing it out fast. You do that in stages. You can follow videos on YouTube, just do DMT meditation, and you can go along with it, and it will tell you on your headphones as you're going along. And then there will come a point where, say you've been doing that for 10 minutes, that really fast-paced breathing, because what that's doing is releasing free radicals. It's cleaning the oxygen in your lungs as well. And it really gets to clean out there as well. That's where you get the lightheaded effect and everything as well. And you do that for, say, 10 to 12 minutes. And then you hold your breath as long as you can. And then you do a big push out and then you lay down. And like you said, the experience that you get, not only do you get, like, it's almost like it helps regulate the, your, what's the word? Not your immune system, nervous system. You know that sometimes when you're kind of jacked up, you drink coffee and, you know, you've been busy day and everything, to get you back down into the zone, stuff like that with heavy breathing work, it helps with the regulating of your system, and you can really feel relaxed. I don't think the effects, or it hasn't happened to me, the effects as heightened as what you do when you're using externally, because we're generating a smaller amount, right, compared to you androgynously, is that the pronunciation? I don't know, but external use of DMT. But it's a really good experience. And the thing is, you get lazy with it as well. It's something that you would, if you do that and it's something that you enjoy, obviously you want to make sure that you're in a good environment as well, just in case random thoughts come up. You know, like you mentioned about monsters. I've never had that kind of experience. It's always been a pleasant experience for me, but I always say, make sure, you know, you don't want to be doing that breathing and you're sitting down and suddenly fall backwards and hit your head on the floor. Exactly. So make sure that you're in a good place for that. But then if you relax and take on the experience, your body just comes like really brought down and relaxed. And that would be good for sleeping. If you have problems getting off to sleep, let's say you have things like racing thoughts. I've never had that kind of problem. I never had problems getting to sleep. I just can't sleep longer than 5.5 hours. I just wake up. And I'm awake then, and I've got to get up. I can't, even if I lay there for 2 hours, I just can't get back to sleep. But it would be a really good tool for those people that do have insomnia or sleeping issues. Do that before bed. Lay down, put your headphones on, and you should have a wonderful night's sleep.
Yeah, and with you know, going back to meditation a little bit, if you've never experienced meditation, you've never done it, what I suggest you do, like even the bare minimum would be taking the time throughout the day to just be conscious about, you know, again, like come back to yourself, like I am here, today is this date, like I am present, but also breathe in and breathe out. So what happens, because we're so stressed out all the time, Danny, and we run around again, like running businesses, whatever we're doing, we tend to breathe very shallow. So this is our breathing. It's very shallow. We take very small amounts of oxygen because we're always like, oh my God, what's happening next? Like we're always anxious, running around, and you know, the phone is giving us small amounts of anxiety that we don't even notice we do. So even throughout the day, if you're like, you know what, everything is okay, breathe in and breathe out, but like a full breath. Even if you do that throughout the day a few times, it's going to change your life even better, like than trying to plan meditating for 20 minutes, because that might not happen, because you know, life goes on and you're like, you know what, I didn't have a chance to do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. But this is something so small that you can do every time you remember yourself. Literally, we have to remember ourselves then, because we're so caught into, again, work and kids and this and that you're like, you literally forget about yourself. You just run around without being aware of yourself. We do that all the time. So just being aware of yourself, like, okay, I'm sitting down and I'm breathing, or you can do this walking or even driving. Just remember you exist. Literally, that's it. Remember you exist. Take a few deep breaths. Like even that will be calming to your body. It will bring new ideas to your mind, refresh, get more oxygen into your lungs, because now you're breathing at your full expansion. You're like, rather than just the shallow breaths we take throughout the day. So I think that will be like, even if you change this, it would be such a significant change into your life.
Indeed. So, Rapia, you good?
Sure. I know. I love these conversations. I feel like this is all we should talk about. Because it's so important. And, you know, for maybe some people would be bored, you know, hearing about these things that are, like you said, woo-woo, right? But they make such a big difference. And if it wasn't important in my life, I would never talk about it. You know, it's great making money and it's great coming up with businesses. And I love all of that. I love all of that. But, you know, taking care of your mind, it's so crucial, because you can only run on fumes for so long before your body, your mind gives up. And then you start, going on medication, like the one you mentioned at the beginning of the show.
Mm.
You're on type of different medications to give you that pleasure that you used to feel when you were young and you didn't need all of that. Then you get hooked into this, and these are things we can do ourselves if we just take the time to get to know ourselves and take that extra minute during the day and sit down and be with yourself. Of course, it's much easier to pop a pill, 100%. It's much easier. And we always try to find ways to hack our systems. Let me take this pill instead of meditating for 3 months. But then you get hooked onto this nonstop trend of I'm taking pills to fix this, and then I'm taking more pills to fix what that thing started. And next thing you know, you're like, where am I even going from this? So it's better to be proactive than wait for something, to happen in the end. Danny, you're amazing, and I love you so much.
You too. All right. Have a good week.
Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.
See ya.